Good morning, friends. Welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery. I am Ayya Soma, and to my right is Bhante Suddhaso. And this morning we will be sharing some Dhamma on the amazing qualities of householders. So in our series dedicated on practicing the Dhamma as lay people, we will be exploring today a sutta. So I will copy and paste it into the comments so you can follow along, and we will be reading from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Right. So we can start by paying homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namassami. All right. So the reason why, well, personally, I picked this sutta, and this morning we're going to discuss it, is actually because the lay disciple Ugga is actually a very impressive being. He's a non-returner. And here he talks about 8 astounding and amazing qualities that are present in a householder who's a non-returner. So maybe we can start by reading the sutta and discussing it as we normally do. Is that all right, Bhante?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the sutta begins by saying, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in the hall with a peaked roof in the great wood. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, venerable sir, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, you should remember the householder Ugga of Vesali as one who possesses 8 astounding and amazing qualities. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the fortunate one arose from his seat and entered his dwelling. Then in the morning, a certain bhikkhu dressed, took his bowl and robe, and went to the residence of the householder Ugga of Vesali. When he arrived, he sat down on the seat that was prepared for him. Then the householder Ugga of Vesali approached that bhikkhu, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. The bhikkhu then said to him, Householder, the Blessed One declared that you possess 8 astounding and amazing qualities. What are they? I love how he asks him straight away so that he can talk about it in person. And so the householder Ugga replies, I don't know, Bhante, what 8 astounding and amazing qualities the Blessed One declared that I possess. However, there are found in me 8 astounding and amazing qualities. Listen and attend closely, I will speak. And I really actually like how he talks about, it's not that I possess these qualities, but that these qualities are found in me. So in a third person perspective, which also actually is quite humble as a statement. Already Ugga is quite impressive in the way that he talks. And the sutta continues by saying, yes, householder, the bhikkhu replied, and the householder Ugga of Vesali said this. Number 1, when Bhante, I first saw the Blessed One in the distance. As soon as I saw him, my mind acquired confidence in him. This is the first astounding and amazing quality found in me. Maybe Bhante Suddhaso, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, just this is pointing to, first thing that comes to my mind is a deep past life connection with Buddhism. So many people, they see a Buddha image or they see a very inspiring monk and it doesn't mean anything to them. Or maybe it even irritates them. But instead of the moment you see an image of the Buddha or an inspiring monk, or if you're lucky enough to actually see a living Buddha, if your mind instantly has confidence, then that indicates that you already have some kind of strong karmic affinity with Buddhist practice. So I take this as indicating, again, that Ugga, even before he learned the Dhamma, he already was bringing from past lives a strong affinity with Buddhism.
Yes, actually, what comes to mind is also as soon as the Buddha attained awakening, that then he encountered the first person that he encounters actually when he declares his awakening. The person replies like, "Yeah, whatever, dude." I actually don't, clearly didn't have the same reaction as Ugga, where there is incredible confidence. So we have different reactions based on different karmic conditions that we bring to this lifetime, and that creates sort of the grounding of the mind towards the Dhamma, like whether or not we're ready to listen to certain things, or whether, yeah, we even take the time actually to ponder them. And then the sutta continues, with a confident mind, I attended on the Blessed One. The Blessed One then gave me a progressive discourse, that is, a talk on giving, virtuous behavior, and heaven. He revealed the danger, degradation, and defilement of sensual pleasures and the benefit of renunciation. When the Blessed One knew that my mind was pliant, softened, rid of hindrances, uplifted, and confident, he revealed that Dhamma teaching special to the Buddhas: suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. Then, just as a clean cloth rid of dark spots would readily absorb dye, so too, while I sat in that same seat, the dust-free stainless Dhamma eye arose in me. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. I saw the Dhamma, attained the Dhamma, understood the Dhamma, fathomed the Dhamma, crossed over doubt, got rid of bewilderment, attained self-confidence, and became independent of others in the teaching of the teacher. Right there, I went for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and undertook the training rules with celibacy as the fifth. This is the second astounding and amazing quality found in me. It's pretty astounding, I have to say. Householder Ugga Vesali clearly has incredible karmic conditions. As we just mentioned, to be able to meet the Buddha and be have incredible confidence in him, and also to, in the first place, to actually be in the presence of the Buddha. That then gives him a gradual teaching, and that is perfect, basically, for his current conditions of mind, and then helps him. Fundamentally, that's the astounding quality of a Sammasambuddha, basically being able to teach anyone who wants to be taught, essentially. But Bhante, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the gradual teaching.
Yeah, and also this, the gradual teaching or progressive discourse, as Bhante Bodhi translated it here, Anupubin Katang. Actually, a few months ago, we had a lovely series of talks by Bhante Sumita on this sequence. So this appears in many suttas, and it's notable here that the Buddha doesn't start with talking about the Four Noble Truths. He starts with talking about generosity, about giving. And then from that, he talks about morality, virtuous conduct, sila. And then he talks about heaven realms. So he starts off with talking about three things that often get skipped over by Western convert Buddhists in particular. They like to skip over these three topics. But this is how the Buddha would commonly begin his discourses to new practitioners. And then the Buddha talks about the dangers of sensuality and the blessings of renunciation, which we normally associate with monastics. But the Buddha would teach this to lay people just as often as he would teach it to monastics, because this is one of the core elements of Buddhist practice, is recognizing that obsession with sensuality is harmful to ourselves and others. And practicing renunciation just brings blessings and benefit to ourselves and others. And in fact, renunciation is the core of the Buddhist path. The entire Buddhist path from beginning to end is about renunciation. And yeah, pointing out that Ugga, because of his, again, prior karmic preparation, was able to understand these teachings very quickly and easily. and come to stream entry. So it doesn't specifically say it in the discourse, but the implication here is that this was the first Dhamma talk he heard from the Buddha. So during the first Dhamma teaching he got from the Buddha, he attained stream entry through this talk on generosity, virtue, heaven realms, the danger of sensuality, the blessings of renunciation, and the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah, I really like also the simile that he uses. Just as a clean rock cloth rid of dark spots would readily absorb dye. So for anyone who has tried to dye things, as monastics venture into that every so often. But yeah, actually pointing out to the importance of priming the mind with generosity, priming the mind with sila, with virtuous behavior, and then being able then to take on the die. And I feel like sometimes actually when we are, convert Buddhists, we tend to be a little bit, restless, and we kind of rush and we don't take the time to clean the cloth properly, but we keep on soaking it in the dye and it just doesn't take the dye, and it can be a little bit of a challenge, but it's quite inspiring how he describes it in such few words. And then from there also being able of seeing whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. So having such a profound, in-depth insight and seeing the Dhamma. It's a lot of Dhamma Sukha for me when I read these verses. All right, and then Ugga proceeds by saying, I had 4 young wives. I then went to them and said, Sisters, I have undertaken the training rules with celibacy as the 5th. If you want, you can enjoy wealth right here and do merits, or go back to your own family circle, or inform me if you want me to give you over to another man. My eldest wife then said to me, Young sir, give me to such and such man. I sent for that man, and with my left hand I took my wife, with my right hand I took the ceremonial vase, and I gave her to that man. But even while giving away my young wife, I don't recall that any alteration took place in my mind. This is the 3rd astounding and amazing quality found in me.
Yeah, so this is talking about his lack of attachment, and in particular, his lack of interest in sensual indulgences. So it's common for lay people to take the 5 precepts, and the 3rd of the 5 precepts is avoiding sexual misconduct. So not taking advantage of people in romantic relationships. It's not particularly common for lay people to take on the practice of celibacy, but it is sometimes done by particularly sincere and devout Buddhist practitioners. But even then, often someone who's practicing celibacy might have some regret, or they might have some nostalgia for sexuality. They might have some desire still arising because their mind is not yet overcome that desire and attachment. So it's noticeable here that, again, Ugga said that he took on the practice of celibacy and told his 4 young wives that they could go and live their own lives elsewhere, even take on different husbands if they want to. But he did so without the slightest regret or disappointment or sense of loss whatsoever. So this also indicates that when the Buddha was talking about the dangers of sensuality and the blessings of renunciation, that Ugga really deeply understood that. He understood that there was no happiness in sensuality, and that there was happiness in renunciation. And that therefore, if his wives wanted to go off and live a different life, then there was no point in him standing in their way. I also like here that he gave them options. He also said that they could continue living in his family and enjoy the wealth of his family. So it also wasn't like, I'm celibate, so now you get kicked out. But rather he was saying, you can still enjoy the material wealth that I have. But if you want to go off and live a life somewhere else, I'll support you with that as well. So it's also indicating this deep quality of compassion. So showing the compassion that he had for his wives, even though he chose to be celibate, he was still cared very deeply about what happened to them.
Yeah, I think that is also a very impressive quality. The fact that a lot of times we can think of levels of awakening as being close to, rather than equanimity, being close to indifference, but we see that here it's quite the opposite. So there is zero self-centeredness. It's not about his choices per se, and just pushing them forward, and not caring about all the sort of his family members, and in this particular case his wives, his companions, but rather actually cultivating these qualities in accordance with Dhamma and with a compassionate mind. So not having any type of alteration, as Venerable Body here talks about it, in the mind. So no jealousy, no craving, no wanting for things to be in a particular way, but rather going about this entirely out of compassion. So giving his companions the options, as Bhante mentioned, of really taking agency towards their lives and making the appropriate choice for them, and supporting them with unconditional love, actually. I would say that this is an example of unconditional love rather than conditional love. And then we see that the sutta proceeds by him saying, "My family is wealthy, but the wealth is shared unreservedly with virtuous people of good character. This is the fourth outstanding and amazing quality found in me." Would you like to share some thoughts on this, Bhante?
I was just pointing to his quality of generosity, that he understood the value of giving to virtuous people, of supporting people of good character, of good conduct.
Great, thank you. And then I would like to read number 5 and number 6 together because they're related, and I find them very inspiring. So he says, "Whenever I attend on a bhikkhu, I attend on him respectfully, not without respect. This is the fifth outstanding and amazing quality found in me. If that venerable one teaches me the Dhamma, I listen to it respectfully, not without respect. If he doesn't teach me the Dhamma, then I teach him the Dhamma. This is the sixth outstanding and amazing quality found in me." I remember when I first read these verses, I really thought, wow, this is astounding. And because Ugga is actually an accomplished being. So I was thinking, monastics, not because we just put robes on, then all of a sudden we are these impressive beings. And there can be some really bad Dhamma talks. Perhaps meeting someone that is not quite impressive with in body, speech, and mind. And since Ugga is a non-returner, clearly a lot of times he is encountering monastics who are way behind him in the path. Yet he doesn't monk-splain to them. Actually, he attends to them respectfully, he listens to them respectfully, if they are teaching the Dhamma to him. And if they're not teaching the Dhamma, then he will teach them the Dhamma out of compassion. How incredible, like so humble, like such an incredible attitude of humbleness that, I think gives us an insight of how awakening actually manifests in a being, whether one is ordained or not ordained. Whenever there is arrogance or a trait of conceit of superiority, well, clearly that seems to be at odds with the path. Or clearly also if someone is not just being a nice person, a respectful person, then the odds are that actually the attainments that either they claim they have or that others claim they have are perhaps a little bit off, I would say. So this is my reflection. And I'm really delighted actually when he he mentioned both of these these two qualities and breaking them down. Actually, I think it's also on purpose that they are broken down. One is attending on him respectfully, and one is listening to the Dhamma respectfully. So making the point. And actually, in the following sutta, maybe we can, or maybe we can get to it later. But yeah, there's another interesting passage on listening to the deities. And Bhante, do you have any reflections on this? Okay. And then the sutta continues. It isn't unusual for deities to come and report to me, householder, the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. I then say to those deities, whether you say so or not, the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. Still, I do not recall any mental exaltation arising because deities come to me or because I converse with deities. This is the seventh outstanding and amazing quality found in me. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine just the average person, if there's a divine being coming to them, they will be quite excited and feel like they're very, the chosen one, the really special ones. Instead, he's says it's quite the opposite, but also he doesn't need for anyone outside, not even divine beings, to tell them that the Dhamma is that special. He has realized it for himself that the Dhamma is incredible and is special. Right?
Yeah. So also this is, again, it's pointing both to his quality of humility, but also to his deep, unshakable faith in the Dhamma.
Of the 5 lower fetters taught by the Blessed One, I don't see any that I haven't abandoned. This is the 8th astounding and amazing quality found in me. So here, fundamentally, he declares that he is a non-returner. Maybe Bhante, you can share a few words on what exactly being a non-returner is.
Yeah, so there's 5 aspects to being a non-returner. So the first 3 are shared with the stream mentor. So someone who has abandoned coarse self-identity, Sakaya Ditti, who has recognized that ritual practices are not sufficient for awakening. So Silabbata Paramasa. One who has, again, no doubt or skepticism about the Buddha's teachings, so no vicikicca. And also one who has abandoned all sensual desire and all aversion. So there remains in the mind of a stream enterer only subtle desire, so the subtle desire for existence, and subtle delusion. So only the most subtle forms of desire and aversion are still present in the mind. But all coarse desire and aversion has been completely eradicated from the mind of a non-returner. So a non-returner, for example, is naturally celibate. They just have absolutely no interest in any kind of sensual indulgence. It just doesn't even occur to them. Also, they don't have aversion towards any person or any experience. They're not bothered by physical pain. They're not disturbed by anything that they experience. So a non-returner is extremely close to awakening. They're extremely close to full enlightenment.
Thank you, Bhante. And maybe we can switch to the Dutiya Ugga Sutta, so Anguttara Nikaya 822, the one that is right afterwards. This sutta, where it's fundamentally the same sutta, except that there are some slight differences and elaborations. And the first quality that Ugga declares that is present in him is, he says, Bhante, I was carousing in the Naga Grove when I first saw the Blessed One in the distance. As soon as I saw him, my mind acquired confidence in him and my drunkenness vanished. This is the first astounding and amazing quality found in me. I love so much this description of my drunkenness vanished. What exactly is the Pali word for?
Suramado, which actually very literally means like alcohol intoxication.
Interesting.
So he means it quite literally. Like his drunkenness from having consumed alcohol disappeared.
That's incredible. Why do you think that is, Bhante?
Bhante Samhita, why did his drunkenness disappear when he saw the Buddha?
After attaining Anagami?
No, this was when he first saw the Buddha. So he was drunk in the forest, and then he saw the Buddha. And he immediately had deep faith in the Buddha, and his drunkenness disappeared. So his mind became very clear.
Very clear, right?
Yeah.
Drunkenness means actually you feel like hazy, you can't see things properly. And so his mindfulness, his attention, his view become very clear. His right view was very evident. Yeah, by seeing the Buddha himself, to some person who is just about to be blown, I think it's an amazing quality.
Yeah, so I think that part of what this is pointing to is that when Ugga saw the Buddha, he saw that there was a being who was completely awake, completely clear-minded. And he realized, so Ugga realized that he himself also had that same ability. And also it's kind of that reality check of like, what am I doing? Why am I intentionally blurring my mind with intoxicants? Why am I intentionally damaging my mindfulness and wisdom? When you see somebody who has perfect mindfulness and perfect wisdom, then it makes you reevaluate your own priorities. What's actually important to you?
Could it be metaphorical? When I actually first read this, I thought it was metaphorical. I didn't actually think of Ugga as being a drunk, although I might be wrong.
He was a Jain disciple.
I don't know.
Guhapati, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember his. I'm not actually big with biographies, but we can ask Venerable Yomanyanya, who, on the other hand, is actually very into the biographies of everyone.
He was a Jain disciple, and so Jain people are also very extreme, non-violent, and very disciplined people. Maybe it was much easier for him to see the Buddha and got everything clear. I have to double check.
Yes, we can just double check his biography. But anyway, I was thinking when I had first read it, that in hindsight, I feel like even when I was not drunk, I was drunk. So there is that sort of quality of intoxication, inebriation, and blurriness of experiencing life without the Dhamma. And so I can see how by seeing the Buddha, you have a sort of that, like a kind of sobering effect of this is what is important, this is what is the foremost, that this is conducive to liberation, this is conducive out of suffering.
It cuts through your heedlessness, and it makes you realize, oh, this is serious. Like, this life I'm living is not some silly game.
Yeah,
it's actually serious, and I need to take each moment with some gravity and importance.
Yeah. So that is how I had taken it, but I hadn't realized that it actually meant literally intoxicated with liquor.
I would take it pretty literally. Sura literally means alcohol. So suramado pretty literally means alcohol intoxication.
Although a lot of times you can use such words as idioms, like idiomatic.
It could be. It could be.
Anyway, moving forward in this sutta, actually, so it covers the same qualities that were present in the previous sutta, but on number 6, the householder Ugga says, it isn't unusual that when the Sangha has been invited by me for a meal, deities come and report to me. that bhikkhu householder is liberated in both respects. That one is liberated by wisdom. That one is a body witness. That one is attained to view. That one is liberated by faith. That one is a Dhamma follower. That one is a faith follower. That one is virtuous, of good character. That one is immoral, of bad character. Still, when I'm serving the Sangha, I do not recall thinking, let me give this one little, let me give that one a lot. Rather, I give with an equal mind. This is the sixth astounding and amazing quality found in me. It is pretty astounding. First of all, that he keeps making merit. This is also very interesting to me. That clearly, I mean, he doesn't really need to make merit, so to speak, in terms of creating karma points, as we say, or nourishing the soil, because he's already, a non-returner. Yet he keeps offering the meals to the Sangha. So there seems to be an innate then understanding that that is something wholesome to be done. And then on top of that, the quality of not discriminating amongst the monastics is quite impressive, and also connected to the previous sutta of how, he will act respectfully and he will listen to the Dhamma, even though perhaps he's being taught the Dhamma by someone who has, who perhaps hasn't even entered the stream. But most likely, even if they have entered the stream, they are at a lower attainment. So it's interesting how then he will give equally to each one of them. This has been, I have more questions actually than things to say, but it is interesting how he will equally give to someone who is virtuous and one who is immoral, for example.
I think part of this is because he recognizes that in supporting the Sangha, one is supporting the entire Sangha. So even if the Sangha member in front of him is not the best monk, even if they're actually quite a bad monk, they're still a member of the Sangha. And so by supporting the Sangha, he's supporting everybody who's part of it. He's supporting the entire monastic community. So that's also indicating this deep appreciation for the value of the monastic Sangha itself. Recognizing that the monastic Sangha as a whole is a container for awakening. It's a vessel of wisdom and compassion. And that vessel does sometimes hold some unsavory characters in it. But that doesn't change the fact that the vessel as a whole is an incredible source of goodness and wisdom in the world. So I think this also is indicating his own clarity of understanding the value of the monastic Sangha, rather than fixating on any individual person.
Right, because we tend to think I'm giving to that person rather than I'm giving to the Sangha. So someone who clearly sees properly in these matters instead goes beyond that and sees the actual value of one of the gems of the triple gem. It's very, very interesting. Clearly, I have lots to learn from the householder Ugga. And I think, well, the number 7 is like the one before, and then number 8, if I were to pass away before the Blessed One, it wouldn't be surprising if the Blessed One would declare of me, there is no fetter bound by which the householder Ugga of Hatigama might return to this world. This is the 8th astounding and amazing quality found in me. So just in case you had missed it, he is a non-returner, and here it's declared again. All right, so at this point, there are a few comments here. Let's see. Michael says, this quality of giving with uncompromising compassion is interesting, especially vis-a-vis the Victorian idea of the worthy poor, that, by the way, the sutta seems to suggest.
I don't quite understand. Oh, maybe his next his next question.
Please explain about giving to the unworthy, which seems to be part of dana non-discrimination. I think we just actually...
Yeah, well, and briefly, there's no such thing as the unworthy. You can't say this person is unworthy, because every sentient being has the ability to attain awakening. So this is quite explicitly stated in the Mahayana tradition, that when you give a gift to any sentient being, you're giving a gift to a future enlightened being, to a future arhat, a future Buddha. So maybe right now they're not so impressive, but they, in the future, they could become an enlightened being. So it's looking at the deep potential inherent in the person you're giving a gift to. And yeah, so, and also recognizing the arrogance of judging people. It's like, well, I'm not going to give to that person because I think they're lazy. I'm not going to give to that person because I don't like their haircut. I'm not going to give to that person because they have too many cats. It's like, well, let's be realistic. Who do we think we are to know who to give to and who not to give to? What wisdom are we arrogating to ourselves that we think we know who's worthy of gifts and who isn't? Only a Buddha has the ability to know people's minds to that incredible detail. The rest of us, we don't have that kind of capacity. What we do know is that every single sentient being has the ability to attain awakening, and therefore every single sentient being is honorable and respectable, and therefore worthy of offerings. Those are my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Another thing that comes to mind is actually some good friends who are born in Buddhist countries, like Burma or Thailand. That has always impressed me, actually, how they're trained since they're very young not to have unwholesome thoughts towards the members of the Sangha. So not to criticize monastics. And sometimes even when they are actually behaving quite reprehensibly and from a sort of covered Buddhist mind, which is my current state of existence right now, sometimes it can sound quite absurd, which is why I think I have a bit of both awe and resistance towards the verses that we just encountered. There seems, it's counterintuitive sometimes, the Dhamma. So it's actually worth of investigating. Like what are we hung up with? And are we actually really understanding the text? But it's actually quite beautiful, I have to say, seeing that trait in my fellow friends on the path who happen to be lay people that are fellow Buddhists, and they just have that kind of really beautiful equal way of giving, actually, no different than how Ugga is described. That impartiality, that it doesn't matter. Like, the important thing is actually making merit. So there is this focus more on the giving rather than the giving with the return or the following up on where has that gift gone to, and what are they going to do with that, and etc. But rather, we're giving. That's it. And it's a meritorious act, and it should be treasured. So yeah, it's a lot of food for thought. Also personally, I have to say. And then Pial says, could this intoxication, drunkenness, mean not alcohol, but other intoxication referenced in the sutta? For example, intoxication with wealth, intoxication with youth, etc. Very interesting.
Well, I think that those other forms of intoxication they're actually more specifically called as such, like wealth intoxication, youth intoxication, life intoxication, and so on. So I seem to recall a sutta where the Buddha talks about 5 kinds of intoxication. So suramada, like the intoxication with alcohol. Then the other ones, yopanamada, intoxication with youth. Jivamada, intoxication with life, and so on. So here it does actually specify suramada, So I take that quite literally. But yeah, and you could take it as metaphorical. So alcohol-like intoxication. But I would take it at face value personally.
Interesting. And Anita says, would you say Ugga's recollection is something we can practice and thereby cultivate remembrance of Dhamma, as sometimes forgetfulness is a big one in the middle of householding?
What do you think?
I don't think I understand the question.
So I think she's talking about like Ugga recollecting his own good qualities.
Oh yeah, we actually spoke about at length. We spoke about that at length yesterday. I think during the Upasata. So yes, absolutely. Recollecting one's own goodness is something that the Buddha recommended to do over and over again, because we actually want to keep cultivating the goodness, not just be sort of okay with mediocrity, you know. So whatever we have acquired right now, we're probably all fairly like a good people. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. We would be actually getting drunk, or you know, eating. Stuffing our faces with food, or you know, all sorts of sensual pleasures. We definitely wouldn't be here, you know, for 45 minutes now listening to a Dhamma talk. So we can actually all contemplate that we're averagely good people, more or less. We've done some really good deeds in the past, but you know, if we're not at any level of awakening, we're actually pretty mediocre. And mediocrity is not inspiring. So we want to actually really, really make progress, really be ambitious. You know, that's why I always laugh whenever people ask me questions such as, you know, but then one has no ambitions in this path anymore. This is the most ambitious thing ever, to remove greed, hatred, and delusion from the mind. So yeah, be ambitious. Fill yourself with good qualities. Actually, that's the exhortation that the Buddha gives to Punna, one of the enlightened bhikkhunis of the time of the Buddha. Before she attained awakening, the Buddha would exhort her that way. He would tell her to grow full of good qualities, like the moon on the 15th day. So like a full moon. And that's basically what we should think about. You know, think of ourselves. Yes, we have, well, sometimes we are like a full moon, a new moon, because we're like completely dark. But sometimes more, I would say that mostly we are like a half moon. So yeah, keep on aspiring on growing in wholesomeness. And so recollecting our goodness helps us point the mind in the right direction. And yeah, you can be forgetful, by the way, as a householder, like you can be as a monastic. Monastics can be actually quite busy doing a lot of different things, no different than householders. So really putting this on is not in of itself a guarantee for awakening. It's something that actually, following the precepts and taking certain vows, makes life easier in certain respects, but to look at the mind. But certain, you know, things are to be done as householders, just like as monastics, and watching the mind in every single moment, regardless of the conditions. And Jonathan says, thank you, Venerables, for sharing this wisdom. Please advise about non-attachment, for example, to a car. When something unwanted happens, I'm experiencing suffering and aversion comes up.
Yeah, so one of the recollections the Buddha said we should do every day is anything that is dear and beloved to me is changing and will be separated from me. So we should constantly remember that about everything we have that we like, we're subject to lose it. It's going to change. That's just the nature of all things. So the problem isn't the fact that things change or disappear. The problem is that we expect them to stay the way we like them. So ultimately, it's about cultivating a mind of contentment. Whatever situation you're in, to be content with that. So if you have a nice car, well, then be content with your nice car. If you have a bad car, well, be content with a bad car. If you have no car, well, be content with no car. I haven't had a car in 15 years. And let me tell you, I'm totally content without a car. In fact, life is so much easier without a car, I have to say.
Well, I never had a car, so or a driver's license. So there you go. No problem. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when I was a little child, I remember I would suffer a lot from losing, little toys. I remember actually when I was 6, my parents wouldn't really buy me toys that often, but every now and then I would convince them to buy it for me. Like, it would take a lot of work, actually, like, months and months of persevering and praying and begging. And so I remember I really wanted this doll, and they would just go like, no, you don't need it. There's no way you're going to have this doll. And then after months, finally we go to this store, we buy this doll, and I am so happy. I still remember that delight in my mind of getting this doll that I had dreamed for months and months and months. And we put it in the car, and then we go to another store, I think to do grocery shopping for my mom or something. And then we come out, and there's no doll because there's no car. The car had disappeared. They had stolen the car. And my parents are really alarmed, about the car. And I am in tears and distraught about the doll. It's like so much dukkha, 20 more times than my parents with the car. And I remember after that, it took me a while, actually, about, a week or so, to get over the grief from losing the doll. And I started contemplating how, I had lost quite a few things in that short amount of time that I had remembered being alive. And it was so much grief. And how I was becoming upset for these things that, I was like, I actually made that a contemplation. I never really had that doll. I had that doll for 2 seconds. Why am I so upset with something that only was part of me for such a short amount of time? And then I was like, it's clearly not reliable. So then up until from the age of 6 onwards, I started training my mind. Whenever I would attain something that I wanted, or even before I attained it, I would think of it actually similarly to how Ajahn Chah talks about it. Talks about, whatever thing, like this phone, is already broken. So I would imagine I would take this phone and then think, right now it's crashing on the floor and I won't be able to use it anymore. It's broken already. It's broken already. And then actually, once it broke, when we were visiting this place in Brooklyn. This was as a householder, actually. Yeah, at the very beginning of Buddhist Insights, when I was still a lay person, we were in this warehouse in Brooklyn, and the phone dropped from my bag, and we were high up on the floor, and so I saw it disintegrating on the floor, and I was completely equanimous. And Bhante Suddhaso, I remember, remarked on it, going like, yeah, that's pretty great. And it was interesting. You know why? Because I had trained myself for many years to do that. Now, emotionally, on the other hand, that that can be a mess, because I haven't trained myself, or I started training myself recently. So yeah, my invitation would be to do exactly that. Train yourself whenever you're acquiring something to look at it as already broken, and then naturally suffering doesn't arise. It's more difficult to do it with immaterial things, from my experience, like people or feelings, or even promotions, actually, at work, that kind of stuff. But you can start the physical. It's actually the easiest. All right, and I think, Ishan says, please share your thoughts about how to come out of guilt. Sometimes it's difficult for me to forgive myself after I've done something bad.
Well, and it's good to remember that that person who you remember is not you. So you have a memory of somebody doing something bad, but that's not you. It's just a memory. So if you think, I am that person who did something bad, then that's a delusional thought. So instead, focus on, you can think, okay, I have this story in my mind of this person who did something bad. I'm going to try not to do anything like what that person did. And then you reflect on your current mind. It's like, well, what is my current mind? My current mind is that of somebody who's trying to only do good things. So that's admirable. That's praiseworthy. So the stories we have of the past, of some person in the past, those are just lessons to remind us of the importance of doing good things and to stay away from making bad choices. But that doesn't define us. What defines us is our choice in the present moment to follow the principles of morality and goodness and compassion. That's what matters.
Great. And I think that's all, the last question. So that's all for this morning. We will be meeting again this evening. And tomorrow morning, actually, Venerable Vimalanyani will be sharing the story of another incredible householder. I don't remember which one, but but it's part of her series. And then in the evening, we'll have Ajahn Brahm, who will be answering questions from monastics and also a few lay people. So tune in, ask your question, and then we'll see if we have time at the end to ask it to Ajahn. All right, so we can end the morning with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.